Privacy is dead, and I'm going to give you 3 reasons why this is true. First of all, online there never was any privacy. Every website we go to, every internet search term we put into our browsers, everything we watch, everything we shop is logged. Why? Because people want to market to us. That's why. I mean, look at me. I'm a 51-year-old white male who's a Christian. That puts me in a box. And once I'm in that box, people can sell me stuff. So online, digitally, we leave a footprint everywhere we go and every time we do anything. Now, generally, it doesn't matter. I mean, who cares? There's billions of people online and there's billions of people doing internet searches. No one really cares what exactly we do. They just want to know what we do so they could sell us things. But privacy does come along because of mass action. There's so many billions of people doing so many billions of transactions every day online that we're just lost in the noise. Now, if you type in a search engine that the CIA doesn't want you searching for, or maybe you try to go on the dark web, oh yeah, go ahead and try that. You're going to find a CIA honeypot. Even the dark web is not secret. You leave tracks everywhere. Okay, putting that aside, there's a second area that has completely destroyed privacy, and that is DNA and genetics. Millions of people have had their DNA tested. Many of those are in publicly accessible databases. Even the ones that are private companies can be served with a warrant, and the government can come and search their database looking for things. There was a famous case of a man named Hans Jonathan that I mentioned several episodes ago. His father was a European, his mother was a slave in the Caribbean. Well, he was taken to Denmark, and then he escaped to Iceland, and apparently lived there, because there are a bunch of Icelander people today who have African pieces of DNA. And when they trace their family tree back, they all go back to the mid-1800s and identified this man who was half African, half European, lived in Iceland, settled down, became a shopkeeper, had some kids, and the kids of the kids of the kids are still around with us today. And we can identify them. In fact, they recreated about half of his genome from the pieces left over in his descendants. So we can also identify ancestors now. This is crazy. But that's nothing compared to what's coming down the pike right now. We are on the verge of instantaneous environmental DNA sampling. There's a new machine, it's called a Nanopore sequencer, which is amazing and cool. I mean, brilliant. What they do is they take a piece of DNA and they pass it through a pore on a charged plate. And as the A's, C's, T's, and G's pass through the hole, it changes the charge on the plate. And you can tell which letter, therefore the sequence of letters that are coming through that little pore. And you can put an unlimited number of pores on a chip. Therefore, you can sequence in parallel thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of DNA sequences at the same time, in real time, and fast. So what would happen if you deployed one of these on a subway? Well, you could monitor flu viruses, or coronaviruses, or bacteria floating through the air, or people. Yeah, because you shed DNA. Your environment around you is full of your DNA. So any person who comes within the airspace of that sequencer, especially if it's pulling air in and filtering and pulling DNA out, can technically and theoretically be identified. Now, we're not talking about full genome sequences with that kind of data, but you can certainly look for identifiable marks if you're looking for a person, even in a crowded place like New York City, or Los Angeles, or Moscow, or Beijing. Wow. Yeah, privacy is gone. But not only that, adoptions are no longer private. Cases of infidelity that resulted in the child are no longer private. Even kidnapping is no longer secret. There's a woman named Barbara Ray Venter. She's actually one of my heroes. I would love to have her job. If I didn't like my job so much, I would want to do what she does. She's a genetic sleuth, solving cold cases and things like that. And the first big case that she cracked was the Bear Brook murders. She was asked to help a child who was kidnapped when she was a baby to find her parents, to find her family. And she did. But in so doing, they got to identify a perpetrator of a series of murders, and boom, she got famous for that. But then next, she was asked to work on something called the Golden State Killer case from California. Now, this back in the 70s and 80s, there was a man who was raping and murdering his way across California. No one knows how many acts he perpetrated, but it was a lot, and there was a lot of crime scene evidence left behind. Well, now, enter the modern world. They took the DNA from that crime scene evidence, and they worked it up. And they made it look like an ancestry report, and they submitted it to a free website called gedmatch.com. Now, it's recently been purchased by a company who's trying to make money off of it, but for a long time it was completely free, completely open, and anyone in the world could upload their DNA to that website. So you could go and get ancestry.com or 23andme.com or familytree.com to sequence your DNA, and then you could upload it for free to this publicly accessible website. And they did that with this murderer and rapist. They took his DNA, they put it on that computer, and sure enough, some of his relatives were in that database. Second cousins, third cousins, it doesn't matter, because once you can identify a relative, you can start building a family tree. And if you build a family tree, you can sometimes say, oh, it's got to be that person right there. So they got a warrant, and they followed the guy. And the first thing they did is they took a swipe from his door handle, and they sequenced his DNA from the door handle of his car, and it was a match. And then they found a dirty tissue in his trash, and they sequenced that, and that was a match too, and they arrested him. He has since confessed. I'm not going to mention his name because it's not worth mentioning his name, but it sure does look like this person was guilty of the crime. That is amazing, and that is good. It is good that murderers and rapists can no longer hide because they leave DNA behind, and now we can find them. But as far as privacy goes, that means that you as an individual can also be identified. Let's say you had a identical twin, and your identical twin submits their DNA to Ancestry. That's your DNA, and you've had no control over it. Or let's say that your brother or your sister or your mom or your dad or your cousin submits their DNA to 23andme.com. You have no say over it whatsoever, and your DNA is now online. Identifiable DNA. I mean, if your cousin submits DNA and your DNA turns up in a crime scene, they're going to say, oh, it's a cousin to this person right here. And there's no escaping it. Privacy is gone. Just ask Ben Affleck. Yeah. One of my favorite shows is Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates. Really cool show. They take famous people, they do a DNA thing, they look at their ancestry, and they tell them where they came from and who their ancestors were. It's really cool. But Ben Affleck had some slaveholders in his family, and he asked the producers to not reveal that to the audience. And he got in a whole lot of flack for that. Because Ancestry is online, DNA is online, your habits of browsing are online. And even if you're trying to hide something from your spouse or your pastor, well, Amazon or Netflix or those other sites that we don't mention in public, they know where you're going. You can't hide. There are no more family secrets. I mean, back in the day, if a young woman who was unmarried was found to be with child, typically they would just shelter her away for several months and then adopt the baby out after the baby came out. Happened a lot. Sometimes the baby would be in the family and the mother would just be called the sister because, lots of families have children 16, 17 years apart. This happened to a famous singer named Bobby Darin. You might have seen the Kevin Spacey movie that featured this story. And he's a really famous singer back in the 50s, had a TV show for a little while. You've probably heard some of his songs on the oldie station if you listen to that kind of music. But Bobby Darin was a really famous person back in the day. And at one point in his late 30s, he was told, and he admitted this in public, that his sister was actually his mother. Now today, that would be completely obvious with any ancestry test. You cannot hide these things anymore. Not that that's so good necessarily, because sometimes, family secrets hurt. And there are families that are being torn apart with this stuff. There's a geneticist for a class project. He told his class that he was going to get 23andme.com testing done, and he's going to get his parents done also. He wrote an article called, "With Genetic Testing, I Gave My Parents the Gift of Divorce." Because as soon as his material went online, he got contacted by a man who was apparently his half-brother. And this man said, "I've been looking for my family my entire life. You're my brother." Well, it turns out that the dad had had an affair and the mom didn't know about it. And, well, yeah, that ended the marriage. No more family secrets. So what we're learning is that we're all human. We're all fallen. Our families are broken. Every single one of us has someone in their family tree they'd rather not have in their family tree. You have murderers in your background. You have rapists. You have thieves. You have people who have done nefarious things. And there's no way around it. It's true for all of us. Now, maybe you don't have any immediate secrets in your family. You keep digging far enough back and you're going to find some. Humans across the planet are fallen and struggling and in need of redemption. But we don't need redemption for what our ancestors did. We need redemption for what we've done. Because we've all turned from a God with whom there's no privacy. You cannot stand in front of the creator of this universe and think you have secrets. That's not true. There's nothing hidden from our God. And in the end, we're going to have to make account for our deeds here on earth before Him. Now, I'm going to do something that I rarely do on biblical genetics. I'm going to read you a Bible passage with a lot of thick words. Now, I've read Bible passages before, but this one's got some terminology that we need to explain. First of all, it's in a passage on righteousness. What's righteousness? It's to be right, to be good, to be clean, to be pure, to have no sin, to have no error on your account, to be righteous. And big words come up like justified. Well, justification is the process of being made righteous. You're being made just. You're being made clean. You're having your record expunged. There's nothing against you if you're justified. If you're justified, you are righteous. Another big word is redemption. That's to pay a penalty. In other words, if, let's say, like you didn't pay your car payment for a couple of months, well, the collector's going to come and take your car. You want your car back? You have to redeem it. You have to pay the debt that you owe to that car company to get your car back. Redemption, paying a debt. And another big word people don't use very much anymore is called propitiation. That's simply to satisfy wrath. As in, if someone's mad at you because you did something wrong, you have to propitiate them. You have to satisfy their wrath. You might have to give them money. You might have to go to prison. You might have to say something nice, apologize. Or in a case with God, when He said that sin equals death, something's got to die to satisfy His wrath against sin. Let me explain. Ready? Romans 3, 22 through 25. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by His grace as a gift, through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a propitiation by His blood to be received by faith. And I'm not trying to scare you into heaven. That'd be ridiculous. But I am trying to just simply explain to you the gospel. It's really easy. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the sinless Son of God, came to this earth to live a life, specifically to die in our place. Because by dying for us, He propitiated God. He took away the wrath. He took away the sin. He made us righteous. We are justified through the blood of Christ. So there you have it. Privacy is dead. There's no hiding online. There's no hiding your DNA. There's no hiding your ancestry. There's no hiding the family secrets. The skeletons are all out of the closet. And there's no hiding before our holy God. If you're not right with God, maybe it's time to get so. It's not hard. Read your Bible. Find some Christians. Find someone who can explain to you the way of salvation. Because in the end, when we stand before that holy God, with whom there are no secrets, we want to hear the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."